Welcome to the Max Planning Simulation Training Session. I'm your Exact Americas trainer, Vince Stefanetti. In today's session, we're going to show you how easy it is to use the Max Planning Simulation. Keep in mind that you have references available to you to investigate further and learn more about Max. PDFs are installed with your system. You can also gain access to the customer portal at https://customers.exact.com. So let's take a look at what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn what the planning simulation is, what required prerequisites are needed, how to run a planning simulation, and what the simulation options are. Alright, so the planning simulation is located in two different places in Max. In sales order processing, it can be located by navigating to the activity menu and selecting planning simulation. Also, navigating to the master scheduling module, it's available through activity, planning simulation. Now the planning simulation is a forecasting tool for carrying out what-if ATP available to promise scenarios using existing part numbers, BOMs, and MRP schedules for better delivery estimates. This allows a user to create simulations using real parts and existing conditions without affecting current work in process. Keep in mind here that if you promise delivery of an order based on an ATP date displayed in the planning simulation, you should immediately add a demand order to reserve this ATP date in the system. Okay, so let's look at the prerequisites. First of all, bill of materials must exist in Max. Those are entered through the Bill of Materials module. Parts are added through Part Master, and then you can add Bill of Materials using the Visual BOM. Now Max uses the following supply and demand information to calculate surpluses and shortages. Supply orders include master scheduled orders, manufactured orders, planned orders, purchase requisitions, and purchase orders. Demand includes forecast demand, dependent demand, and customer demand. To subtract the planned scrap when the program calculates on-hand quantities, the yielded order quantity logic configuration item must be set to yes using the System Manager system switches. If we navigate to System Manager, select Activity, System Configuration, System Switches, and make sure that yielded order quantity is set to yes. If the switch is set to no, displayed on-hand quantities will be higher than those actually available if planned scrap for the part is accurate. You enter in planned scrap in the Bills of Materials module, in the Part Master tab. Now parts that have a current alternate selected on the Part Master Planning tab will use the current alternate BOM for the simulation. As you can see here, I have the Part Master tabs opened up, and I've clicked on the Planner tab. Below here, you can see that it says Current. Now if a current alternate BOM or routing are selected, this will be used by the planning simulation. Before you run the planning simulation, it's important that you check the options and preferences. You can include Status 1 unapproved planned orders, include Status 2 approved planned orders. You can display demand only if the net required is greater than 0, and you can exclude forecast orders at the simulated level. You can select which critical path lead time to use, either Part Master or Part Sales, and you can perform some rounding functions. Now let's talk about the critical path lead time for a moment. If we go into Sales Order Processing, and we go to Part Sales, you'll see that the critical path lead time is here. We'll select a part, and you can see here that it's displaying 30 days. Now the critical path lead time summarizes the lead time at lower levels to give you an actual date that this particular part will be available and the full lead time for that production of the product. Now this gets updated by going to Batch, Critical Path Lead Time in Sales Order Processing, and running this batch routine. You can select to calculate for all parts, a range, or individual part, and you can exclude purchasing lead times if you want to. You could also have a selection for calculation on part type O, subcontract parts. Now once that runs, you can review the critical path lead time in part sales. However, this is an editable field. If you want to change the critical path lead time for saleable parts, then you can change this here. This also appears in Bills and Materials under the Planner tab. However, you can see here that it's not an editable field. The only place where you can change it is in Sales Order Processing. The one in Part Master remains permanent, but if you want to extend or change it in Sales Order Processing, you can do so. In that way, when you run the planning simulation, you can select changed or updated specifically for sales parts, or you can use the Part Master. Alright, so let's get oriented to some of the items on the screen here in the planning simulation. The first one is the cutoff date. You can specify the date here. We'll select a date. And the planning simulation will only run on or before the specified date. You can use the arrow keys to navigate backward or forward, or double-click to get the calendar. Under On Hand, select the All Radio button to project both surpluses and shortages. Alternately, select either the surplus or the shortage radio button to display only those amounts respectively. Under Part Types, select the All Radio button to include both make and buy part types. Alternately, select either the make or the buy radio button to display only those amounts respectively. Under View, you can select the part ID, but you can also include the MPN if you like. Next, you can type in a part number or double-click to have the Part Master browser come up and select a part. Under Quantity, enter the quantity that you would like simulated. And then click Run Simulation to run the simulation. Now you can see here that after running the simulation, the system automatically displays the critical path lead time and the available to promise date, as well as the expected revenue. Now you can enter up to 500 parts in this display, but the result of our current simulation on this individual part is showing it in red. These are color-coded. Rows highlighted in green may be promised to ship by the displayed available to promise date. Rows highlighted in yellow indicate that more information about the current shop order workload should be obtained before promising availability by the displayed available to promise date. Rows highlighted in red indicate no availability for the part on the displayed available to promise date based on the current supply. Now you can adjust the cutoff date, then run a new simulation to view the next green available to promise date for a selected part ID. We'll do that here. You can see that our available to promise is currently February 13th, 2012. We'll adjust that out a bit. Click OK, and then run the simulation. As you can see here, it displayed yellow, indicating that we need some more information about current shop orders. Alright, so let's add some additional parts. And we'll rerun our simulation. We'll enter in a quantity. And run our simulation. Now, as you can see, based on our dates here, we have an available to promise date that's actually come green, which means we can plan for this using this current available to promise date. Now the bottom part of the planning simulation dialog displays consolidated demand and projects surpluses and shortages in color as follows. Rows highlighted in green indicate a projected part surplus. Rows highlighted in red indicate a projected shortage for a part ID. Now if you double-click any cell on the lower level grid, you can get to the order detail for a particular part ID displayed on that grid. This allows you to peg down the current order requirements for the selected part ID. As you can see here, we can double-click and we get the order detail. So some additional items here are the net required, the quantity on hand, the projected on hand, whether there was a surplus or a shortage, cost and extended cost, the lead time, the requirement date, the start date, the quantity per, the planner, the buyer, a particular vendor, and a manufacturer. Likewise, you can see that we've selected MPN, so it's showing us the manufactured part number here. Okay, so up in the right hand side here, we have all the affected orders by this simulation. If you mouse over the little red square there, it'll give you the components that are affected by this particular order in this simulation. It gives you the quantity. If there was a customer associated to it, it would be here. It gives you the due date. And so you can include and exclude orders here and run another simulation based on that by clicking the button here, Run Simulation Excluding Orders. So if we were to take many of these off here, we could rerun our simulation without those orders being present. Alright. Now there's some other options here. You can select to print the simulated demand grid. You can also choose to copy it and place it on the clipboard. Likewise, for the consolidated demand, you can copy it to the clipboard, print it, or have it appear in Excel. If you want to email it, you could do that too. So all in all, the planning simulation provides you with the ability to simulate quantities of demand and look at the consolidated projected surpluses and shortages for any number of parts. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've learned. We learned what the planning simulation is and where it's located in MAX. We went over the required prerequisites for running the planning simulation. We showed you how to run a planning simulation on one or many parts and look at potential surpluses and shortages. We went over the simulation options so you can configure the planning simulation to your needs. Keep in mind that you do have additional resources. You have the MAX documentation in PDF format available through the System Manager document links, and you also have a full set of documentation that is installed with your MAX system. You also have the customer portal, which is located at https://customers.exact.com. Thanks for attending, and we hope to see you in the next session.